Hey, thanks a lot for stopping by. Always a pleasure to have this man on. It is Dr. Ben Carson, of course, the former HUD Secretary under President Trump. He's a world-renowned neurosurgeon as well, and an all-around great guy. Ben, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing great, Joe. Always good to see you.
It's always a pleasure to have you on. I want to start somewhere a little bit off the beaten path. I don't want to get into some of the politics of the day, reparations talk, and are you going to run for president again, stuff like that. But I want to start with this. President Joe Biden physically has fallen up the stairs 3 times on Air Force One. He's tripped up the stairs another time, didn't fall down. He tripped down the stairs in Japan, seems to have a problem getting around. He gets lost going into the White House. And yesterday we saw him faceplant at the Air Force graduation. Now, the headlines that we're getting from the left media, Doc, are GOP pounces on Biden falling down, he tripped over a sandbag. When I think the headline should be clearly in cognitive and physical decline, the president of the United States falls down again. What do you think is going on here?
Well, people as they age have a lot of problems. Some people age well and some people do not. And, the ones who do not age well, sometimes it's more than just their physical being. And you see a lot of memory problems, inability to think on their feet quickly.
Yeah.
Some of the manifestations that we're seeing now. The thing that's really more disturbing is that there are many on the left who are willing to excuse that, even though you know that it's putting our country at risk because they want to hold on to power. That's a very disturbing development. There was a time when we Americans wanted America to succeed.
Yes.
Now broken down to a place where we just want our party to succeed.
Well, you and I have talked about this. You think his family is putting him at risk. You think the people surrounding him, they're using this guy who is a shell of his former self. Now, listen, I never agreed with Joe Biden. I think he's a bad guy. I think he might be a pedophile. I think he's got all sorts of issues about selling his office. But when he was cognitive, at least you could go at him. At this point, he's a shell.
Yeah, it's very sad. But, I think if there's one person that I blame, it would be his wife, because she knows about this. She's known about this for years. And it would be unusual torture to take someone you love and put them in a situation like that unless you had a motive, and your motive is to have power and fame.
AmericanCornerstone.org is the website. It's Dr. Ben Carson. Can you tell me and my audience the physical makeup of the brain before and after dementia? Is there a physical difference?
Well, the most common type of dementia, of course, is Alzheimer's. And the brain doesn't change its shape, but if you go at the microscopic level, you'll see what we call plaques and tangles and amyloid accumulations and things that demonstrate that there is definitely a problem going on there. And those things affect the transmission of impulses through the brain.
I mean, the only word that I even understood there was plaque. So if there is showing that you're that much smarter than I, but plaque I would think would be something hard that would get in the way, and you said of transmission. So it's really a matter of the ability for you to send brain waves to wherever it has to go to control this motor skill or this pattern of speech. Is that really what it is? It's basically it's hitting a wall and it can't get to where it needs to go?
It can't function the way that it normally does, as signals are not getting through in an appropriate way, unfortunately.
Let's talk about it politically a little bit because, as you know, your former boss, the President Trump, they attacked him, 25th Amendment, he's not cognitive, he can't do this, he can't do that. He even took the test to prove that he was cognitively there, but they did this ruthlessly for 4 straight years. Now if you bring up a cognitive test about Biden, you're the devil on earth. I mean, Ben, why did they get away with that? Why did they get away with the double standard that this wasn't 100 years ago, this is 3 years ago we're talking about?
Well, Joe, you bring up a very important point. Why did they get away with all the various things that they're doing? Things that are absolutely outrageous. And our system was not designed for crooked people. John Adams said, our system is designed for immoral and religious people. Well,
Yes.
We don't have moral and religious people, so it's not designed for that. So we got a real problem on our hands here. When the Justice Department, selectively administers justice, the whole system begins to break down. Confidence in the system breaks down. And unfortunately, that's what we're facing right now.
It's Dr. Ben Carson, founder and chairman of the American Cornerstone Institute. Go to AmericanCornerstone.org. Always great to talk with you. How did they do it so fast? Do you know, Doc? Because, and this is what I mean. Growing up, I knew about drag shows. I never wanted to go to one. I still have never been to one. I know that it's adult entertainment in a darkened nightclub somewhere on Friday and Saturday night. How is it that they're reading to our kids? Why are they now having these so-called family-friendly or kid-friendly drag shows? Why has that permeated our society? And I guess we can add to that the fact that a label called Satan has a bunch of pride material that was in Target stores. They've now taken them out because people like you and me balked. But how did they do this so fast? All of a sudden I woke up and adult entertainment is for 4-year-olds and Satan's making our clothing.
Well, it seems like they've done it fast, but they've been laying the foundation for quite some time. If you go back and you look at the congressional record for January 10, 1963, read into the congressional record were the goals of the Communist Party.
Wow.
Leon Skuson's book, The Naked Communist. And they have accomplished almost all of those goals now, including infiltrating our schools so that they could indoctrinate our kids, infiltrating the media so they could spoon feed the people only what they want to know and shield them for what they didn't want to know, removing God from the discourse, making people dependent on the government, dividing people, having them at each other's throat. All of these things written way back there, 60 years ago. And they've been working on it the whole time. So we're seeing the manifestation of it at this point in time.
Well, how do we stop it? And it sounds like a very broad general question, but again, I feel like it's sneaked up on us. I believe you. I think you're pulling January 10th, 1960 something out, so I'm going to believe you. Of course, you're telling the truth. But I mean, back then we would have said, yeah, but that's ridiculous. We'll never do that here, whether it was read into the record or not. How did they end up doing it, and how do we undo it? I don't want to wait 60 years to fix it.
Well, they don't care that we know, because they're counting on us doing what we have been doing recently and just standing in the corner with our head down and hoping no one calls us a nasty name or tries to cancel us. So by fear and intimidation, that's how they intend to continue to do that. And I'm hopeful that maybe some of the people in Congress who are doing some of these investigations will be like bulldogs and will not just let it go like they always have in the past, because that is our only defense. Other than, violence, we don't certainly want to advocate that. We need our representatives to stand up for what they believe and not allow this to go away. If the director of the FBI refuses to give them a document, they have to insist and they have to use whatever powers exist in order to get that document.
Yes.
Because they have oversight over the Department of Justice, and they should not just settle if the Justice Department says, no, you can't have it.
It's the wonderful Dr. Ben Carson. Go to AmericanCornerstone.org, AmericanCornerstone.org. Now, as a neurosurgeon, can you read my mind, Ben? Is that the story? Because I was just about to go there. I was just about to go right there. I want to bring up Kevin McCarthy. We, the American people, voted a Republican House, a generally very conservative, values-oriented House of Representatives. He offers up a deal to Biden and to Schumer that will avert any sort of default on the debt ceiling. Okay, we're not going to default on our debt. We're going to pay the debt, gives them $1.5 trillion more, which I'm unhappy with, and then gets rid of the 87,000 IRS agents, gets rid of all this pork about $4 billion to build an FBI office, and then he capitulates. He just gives in completely when he sits down with Schumer and with Biden. So like you said, is he afraid of standing in the corner and being called a name? Because, Ben, they've been calling you and me names forever, but we've steadfastly stayed exactly where we believe. Why do you think the Republicans are so weak-kneed? Because this guy McCarthy spoke a good game to get that job, but he just gave in. He just got rolled by Hakeem Jeffries.
Well, the fact of the matter is that we're going to add another $4 trillion to the national debt.
At least.
There comes a point where it becomes our number one financial obligation for the nation, just servicing the debt. It's number 3 right now. It's not going to be long at this rate for it to be number 1. And that's going to have an incredibly powerful impact on future generations. I'm really kind of surprised that the young people, instead of running around saying, yes, we're going to get our debts alleviated, President Biden's going to do it, what they really should be worried about is what is going to happen to the quality of their lives
Yes.
when half their paycheck or more is going to have to go to paying the national debt.
It's watching this unfold is crazy because every time Republicans get leadership, they always capitulate. They always sit down and have the 3-martini lunch with the Democrats, and the Democrats get everything they want. Ben, you just had more Democrats in the House vote for this bill than Republicans. That should tell us everything we need to know. AmericanCornerstone.org is the website. Go there. It's Dr. Ben Carson. Let's talk about reparations, inequity, inequality, all of this stuff. You had the left, who's still the left that they used to be. The Democrats were the ones that did all the bad stuff: slavery, lynching, Jim Crow, separate but equal, the KKK. All, as you know, were Democrat policies. They're still the same party today. They claim they switched, they did something else. But here's a prime example. Gavin Newsom tells the people of California, I'm going to give you reparations. It's going to be great. The people of California said, great, give me some reparations. One guy wanted $200 million each. Literally went in front of some city hall and said, we want $200 million per person. And as soon as they said, okay, we're ready to take the reparations, what did Gavin Newsom do? What Democrats do? I wasn't talking about money. We'll do it some other way. So, Ben, they're lying to them about reparations. They're lying to black people in America who aren't paying attention. Not you, not Dr. Swain, who I had on yesterday. You guys are paying attention and you're great Americans. But they're preying on people who think, wow, I hear a payday. Let me go for that and vote for these Democrats. How do we wake up people in a community that are being lied to and have been lied to by the Democrats for hundreds of years? How do we wake them up to the fact that they're not telling you the truth, guys? They're not going to give you any money. They're not going to pay off your student loans. They just want you to vote for them.
Well, we've known this for a long time from some of the recordings that were done of LBJ.
Yes.
We say we'll give them these stuff and they'll vote for us for the next 200 years. It's the same.
Sadly, he wasn't wrong.
No, he wasn't wrong. It's the same thing. Promise them anything. You don't have to give them anything, but just keep them hanging on. The good thing, though, Joe, is that there are a lot more people of color, and particularly black people, who are waking up.
Yes.
I used to go to conservative functions and be the only blackface. Far from that now. And that's encouraging. And I think as time goes on and people actually begin to see what's happening. I mean, you just look at the last administration, during the Trump administration, all the incredible advances that were made on behalf of black Americans.
Yes.
You don't hear about them from the media because they don't want you to know about all these good things that were done.
Right.
But that will continue, if we get another forward-thinking Republican in office.
Well, I'm with you, but how do people like in Chicago elect Brandon Johnson? Brandon Johnson, who literally is cool with 200 teenage black boys and girls going and robbing anything, burning anything down, and his excuse is, these poor children don't have the opportunities they deserve. Please don't vilify them. Well, how are you ever? You're literally making a pack mentality, again, just to keep them voting for you. But how does Chicago not wake up after Lori Lightfoot? They hired somebody worse.
Well, it's hard to come up with a logical explanation for it because there is no logical explanation for it. There are already people in Chicago calling, for his recall. These are the same
You just had an opportunity to elect a guy who was the law enforcement guy, who was going to go in there and clean things up. Ben, do you think that it's the white liberals that are voting these people in? I don't think that it's the young black people necessarily voting for these idiots. Who's doing it?
I think a combination of them. We have people who've been planning these things for a very long time. They're not going to give up easily. Chaos is part of the whole theory of how you change a society. You have to get people so frustrated with the status quo that they're willing to accept something new and something different. That's how a lot of dictators get into power. So part of it is you have to create chaos. And they're doing a good job of that, quite frankly. Cloward Piven, go look that up. Talks about how you create so much chaos that people can't even orient themselves as to where it's all coming from.
I'm glad you brought that up. I had Grover Norquist on the other day specifically to talk about Cloward and Piven. A couple of pinhead college professors in the 60s came up with an idea of massive chaos and bankrupt the country. Once you
Yes.
bankrupt the country, and that's what they're doing by putting everybody on entitlements, by going $4 trillion more on the national debt, then you start all over. You just wipe the slate clean, and everybody has the same. Meritocracy doesn't matter in America anymore. You could not have succeeded like you have. I could not have succeeded like I have. We should all have the same car, the same food, the same clothing, the same housing, and we're all controlled by a bunch of elitists. That's really the goal here, isn't it?
And there's a lot more to this than just what we've talked about. They also have a goal of destroying our faith and destroying our families.
Why? Is that so the government can be God?
Exactly. That's why they're so hostile to religion in our country. And they want people to only depend on the government. And they're also in the process of dumbing people down. Our school system are failing. Fortunately, there's an explosion in homeschooling. It's doubled since 2020. And the lines for people to get into faith-based private schools is just interminable. And that's good because that means people are waking up. But right now, we're up against the clock. What can happen first? Will we wake up? Will we be courageous? Because you can't be the land of the free if you're not the home of the brave.
100%.
That's really the question here.
Go to the website right now. It's Dr. Ben Carson. I loved you as a candidate. I want to ask you quickly if you're going to run again. We'll talk about that in a second. Website is AmericanCornerstone.org. Executive Branch for America. Is that what this is? EBA. What is EBA, Ben?
EBA is one of the programs of American Cornerstone Institute. And basically, it's the Executive Branch for America. And it teaches people, it's an online course that teaches people, free of charge, by the way, of how the government works, particularly how the executive branch works, how all the agencies work, how they interact, how a bill is put forth, all those kinds of things, how the Office of Management and Budget works with the executive branch and with Congress.
I love this.
And the reason we do that is because most staffers, when they come to Washington, or even if they go to state legislators, they have no idea what's going on. They're like a deer caught in the headlights. It's very hard for them to be effective because they don't know how things work for a year. And we're doing this so that people can hit the ground running, because we also want to encourage conservatives and people who think the right way to go into government. Because if we all stand out and say, no, they'll tear me apart, they'll tear my family apart. If we all do that, what's left?
Only the people tearing us apart. It's Dr. Ben Carson. Go to AmericanCornerstone.org. Find out about EBA. Find out about the book series also for children. Everything he does, go and consume. And Doc, thanks so much for coming on today. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Joe. Good to be with you.
Okay, we're back after this. Stay right here.